It is Friday the 13th.
That's right, and today we are not talking about walking under ladders or stepping on a crack.
Today we are talking all about weather superstitions.
That's right, from red skies at night to crickets telling temperature. We have that and more coming up.
You are watching the Cold Front on VU TV Channel 15. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lynnette Grant.
And I'm Hilko. Like we mentioned, today is Friday the 13th.
That's right, so let's get right into those weather superstitions.
Okay, we're going to start with a very popular one. Red skies at night, sailors delight. Red skies in the morning, sailors take warning. A pretty common wise tale that probably everyone has heard. Sailors and even shepherds will tell you that a red sky in the morning means one thing: stormy weather. According to howstuffworks.com, at sunset, scattering or particles of sunlight means a dry zone of high pressure between you and the sun. If the red, dusty sky occurs near sunrise, that means that calm high pressure has already passed and that a stormy low pressure system could move through soon. This saying works very well in much of the North America area, Europe, and Asia. At the poles in the tropics, though, the weather trends in the opposite direction, meaning that sailors and even shepherds will tell you the exact opposite advice.
Have you ever heard the phrase, "I'm feeling a little under the weather today"? Well, the saying goes all the way back to Hippocrates, who found that certain illnesses seem to worsen with certain weather conditions. People today even claim that they can feel cold air or storms approaching. Some can tell through their arthritis, sinuses, headaches, and even their teeth. Scientists have found no correlation between pain and weather. The only finding close to this theory was in 2007, where they studied knee pain and barometric pressure. It is possible through this study that as the barometric pressure falls due to a storm approaching, one's tissues in their knee would swell, creating pain.
Today has been rather chilly, and I know that we're closer to winter than summer, but let's talk about crickets and weather. Did you know that cricket chirping actually relates to air temperature? According to howstuffworks.com, crickets chirping fast in warmer conditions and slower when conditions are cooler. The range that this applies to is between 64 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The Farmer's Almanac says to count the times a cricket chirps in 14 seconds and then add 40 to that to get the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I don't know about you, Lynnette, but I would say the one that surprised me the most when I was doing the research, I mean, I've heard it before, but the cricket one. Because most people just think, okay, you know, the crickets are out at night, but most people don't think about the tone of their chirping or the pace of their chirping, but really that relates to weather, which I think is awesome.
Right. The first time I heard it was actually through one of my mentors. He was telling me a story how somebody would call the university every day and talk about how frequently the crickets were chirping.
Wow.
And ask the students about it. And some of them were really confused, like, what is this guy talking about? But as we see, based on this myth, there's actually some theory behind it.
Yeah, and then another one shocking that we always hear is you're feeling a little bit under the weather, but that is actually really not related to weather, as we've found out, other than, your knees feeling the pain and stuff. But it has, more people sometimes with colder conditions definitely feel it, like in their bones and stuff. But definitely, that was another kind of shocking find.
I've heard a lot of people talk about their arthritis and say that with the cold temperatures, you can feel it in your arthritis, like it'll start acting up a little bit, or even in your knees. I've heard of that. I mean, granted, I've never experienced it. Sometimes when we have rapidly changing weather systems, I'll get a headache because of that rapidly changing pressure. But other than that,
another thing with pressure change and stuff, people sometimes feel it in their sinuses and their head and stuff. I've experienced that, but nothing in the way of arthritis, pain and stuff like that. Now, the red sky at night, sailor's delight one, I have always heard that common wise tale. And I remember even as a kid, when the storms would come and stuff, I'd look and say, oh, there's a red sky at night. we're going to be okay.
The red skies are always really pretty,
Yes.
whether they're in the morning or at night.
Yeah, but the one again in the morning is the one you need to watch out for, but most people don't know. And actually, I was telling my mom, all about this episode and stuff, and she goes, yeah, I was actually wondering, why that was the case. So it all has to do with the pressure systems in between you and the sun. So I think that that's awesome.
And I think it's neat to see how all of these myths go back a really long time. Like
Yes.
the one about the under the weather, that went back to Hippocrates, which wasn't that around Greek mythology or
Yes.
somewhere in terms of history? So the fact that these myths go back years and years and people have written this down and there's history going back that far is really, really cool to see, especially as you see it go from this time to time and see some studies being done with it. I don't know about you, Lauren, but just the fact that how some of these studies work is really, really cool to see. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever be able to study something for that long.
I know. All the way back from the creator of medicine till now, they've been studying, like you said, about the arthritis and stuff like that. Well, after the break, we're going to talk about cows lying down, and does that actually relate to weather?
I can't wait to find out that.
I know.
Plus, lions, lambs, and weather. We have this and more coming up.
You're watching The Cold Front on VUTV, Channel 15.
Good morning, Valparaiso University. What's a better way to start your day than with a new jam? And WVUR has just what you need.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, if dying young won't change your mind, baby,
Broadcasting sports, news, weather, and music on air, online, and on campus. WVUR is my jam.
Welcome back to the Cold Front. Today we're talking all about weather superstitions.
That's right. We've already talked about the red skies in the morning, what that means, and that even crickets can tell the temperature.
Now let's move on to cows lying down. I know it's a weird one to think about, but it has been said that cows lay down when rain is approaching. According to howstuffworks.com, actually, cows lay down for a variety of reasons. A possible link between cows lying down and weather is body heat, of all things. Cows tend to stand more when their bodies overheat. Some could argue that when they lay down, that means cooler weather and maybe even storms. But no links have really been found with cows lying down and the weather.
Now, some of you guys might have noticed a halo around the moon on a clear night. This has brought forth the superstition that the ring around the moon means that rain real soon. The halos are produced by high clouds made of ice crystals, and the ice reflects the moon or even sunlight in some cases. The light bends can create what is known as sundogs during the day. Now, the clouds associated with these halos are cirrus, which normally are ahead of weather fronts, which verifies that halos mean rain in the future.
Now, the next superstition is more related to this time of year. We've recently seen our first frost here in Valpo. It is said that clear skies at night means frost is soon. It is true that clear skies mean cooler temperatures. These cold temperatures are often brought from dry, high-pressure systems. During the day, the sun's shortwave radiation is absorbed by the Earth, which helps heat the planet. When the sun sets, the Earth begins to lose this radiation. Clouds help to trap some of this heat, so when a clear night occurs, that is why temperatures tend to be colder. That is also why this saying exists, cold in the night when the stars shine bright.
And a little later in my forecast, we will be having clear skies, so that is something we'll have to talk about. Well, have you ever heard the weather be compared to a lion and a lamb? Well, according to weather superstitions, this is possible. March is known as a transition season because we move from winter to spring. According to howstuffworks.com, since this is the case, one would expect it to go from cold to stormy and mild and drier by the end of the month. Some also believes that this is a case because March kicks off with the constellation Leo. That is how the phrase, if March comes in like a lion, it will go out like a lamb. But it has been found that this superstition, only the case, it's just a superstition, so it's not actually the truth. And patterns have shown, okay, it happens every once in a while, but just because March comes roaring in with a big snowstorm doesn't mean that it's going to exit Pleasant and Brighton.
Right, we've seen it a lot, especially in the past few years, how we think March, it's springtime. Nah, sometimes you still got those snowstorms going on.
Now, the phenomenon about sundogs, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to see those. I know that those are very popular, and most people might think, what is that? So if you've ever been out and about when, the sun is out and you've noticed what looks like two little rainbows on either side, that is what's known as a sundog. So that's caused, like we said, from the cirrus clouds above with the ice crystals, and the sun reflects off of it, and then that does sometimes mean that rain is soon in the forecast.
Sundogs are some of my favorite things to take pictures of. I remember one time a few years ago, it was very, very cold one morning, and I went to the Union to get breakfast, and I looked out the window, and I just see out the window that there's this huge sun halo with complete sundogs on both sides of the sun. So I went outside and I took a picture of this before class, and I think it got a lot of popularity, I remember, because sometimes you'll just see the sundogs, which are the rainbows on the side of the sun, and not really the full halo. But the fact that we could see the whole halo as well as the sundogs was really, really cool.
Right, and then I know, like I mentioned, tonight's supposed to be a clear night. That one, it's typically heard of that, the frost is going to be nearby and stuff when the temperatures get that low. What creates that is when you get a mixture of calm winds and clear skies, that helps the temperatures to fall very quickly, especially if you don't have clouds. Because like we mentioned, the clouds are what trap the temperatures. So it is very common in that old wives' tale. But I don't know about you, Lynette. The one that really got me was the one about the cows laying down. What were your thoughts on that?
See, I've heard the saying about cows and laying down in rain and stuff, but I've never really heard the myth. I remember one time a few years ago I went on a storm chase and all the upperclassmen were joking around about, oh, let's look at the cows and see if they're laying down, and I kind of just picked up on the joke, but I never realized that there's actually a myth that was put behind it. So when I first saw that, I'm like, that's actually like really, really funny, and how can this go about being a myth? But it kind of makes sense with the myth and how their bodies tend to overheat, and that's when their cows tend to stand up.
Yep, so no relation to weather. Well, when we return, we're going to talk about pine cones. Can they predict the weather?
Plus, lightning and thunder can predict the distances away from a storm.
We have all this and more when we return.
Stick with us. You're watching The Cold Front on VUTV Channel 15.
Good morning, Valparaiso University. What's a better way to start your day than with a new jam? And WVUR has just what you need.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it... If Daniel won't change your mind, baby,
Broadcasting sports, news, weather, and music on air, online, and on campus. WVUR is my jam.
Welcome back to the cold front. Today we've talked about all about weather superstitions.
Now earlier we talked about crickets telling the temperature.
Now some believe pine cones can predict the weather too.
That is right. According to howstuffworks.com, some believe that a profusion of pine cones in the fall means a colder winter to follow. This actually is not the case. Pine cones actually take about 3 years to become fully grown. The variance in cone production throws off this prediction. You can use the temperatures to watch them open and close. In wetter conditions, pine cones actually shut in order to protect their seeds. But if you notice when they're more open, that means that there are actual drier conditions.
Now this one might not be as heard of that often. Mackerel sky and mare's tails make lofty ships carry low sails. The term mackerel sky in German and French mean sheep clouds. This cloud feature is an assembly of clouds that look like a series of waves or fish scales with random patches of blue peeking out. These clouds indicate moisture in a cool sky, and this means the clouds will begin to break up due to instability. Mare's tails are long cirrus clouds stretched from high-level winds. Assuming mackerel clouds are made of ice, if they are darker, this could mean precipitation in the lower levels. This could be better weather coming in the near future, but keep an eye to the sky, so if they do continue to develop, that could mean a front or thunderstorms are coming.
Now the next superstition is actually one that can be applied to weather, and I've actually used this one before. It has been proven that lightning and thunder can actually tell the distance a storm is away. In physics, light travels a lot faster than sound. So after you see lightning, if you were to count the seconds it takes for you to hear thunder, every 5 seconds equals a mile away. So that makes sense because at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, sound travels through the atmosphere at about 1,129 feet per second. Thus, for every 5 seconds, the sound will travel about 5,645 feet. So I know that that one's a really popular thing. I know when I hear the thunder and lightning, I sit there and I count, okay, and you see within every 5 seconds how many it takes, and that's how long you can tell the distance away from storm from you.
I remember learning this myth when I was younger and watching a kids' TV show. They brought it up in one of the shows I watched, and that was like one of the first things I learned about weather, that lightning is 1 mile away for every 5 seconds you count. So I'm like, okay, so like you said, every time I would see lightning, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4 until I heard the thunder. And it was really cool to be like, oh, that lightning was 2 miles away or something. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the storm is that far away. The lightning can still be treacherous, even though a storm's very far away.
Right. So you need to be careful that no matter what, when you hear thunder or see lightning, go inside, hit higher ground, and that's something that we'll definitely need to talk about because thunderstorms aren't usually the big case now. We're going to be focusing on winter weather and stuff like that, but for future reference for the springtime, that is something that's definitely important.
How about that myth you were talking about with the pine cones?
Yes, that one I read and I was like, this is weird.
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, I did not know that they actually closed when there are like wetter conditions out and opened when there's drier conditions. I did not know that. The whole thing with temperature and stuff, that would.
It makes sense with the pine cones opening up, trying to open up and get more moisture. Because if you think about it, in the desert with cactus roots, they extend out very far, just right under the surface, that way to try to get any moisture that does fall in the desert. So I could see the pine cones doing the same thing with expanding out, trying to get more water into the tree. So that makes sense. And then when they have too much water, to try to close up and cut off any extra water from going through. But it is interesting that I did not know it takes 3 years for pine cones to grow and develop.
And they mentioned, the production in those 3 years varies and stuff, so it kind of throws that off. And then the whole thing about the mackerel sky, I know we were walking to choir the other day, and I said, hey, that's one of the superstitions we're going to be talking about. So that's something you commonly see when you see those little peaks of blue. I noticed those, especially on Wednesday before that big system that moved through and stuff. So that was definitely saying, lower pressure is coming, stormy conditions. And no sooner than that, we got into to choir and the clouds started just forming over the top and stuff. So I was like, this, myth is actually true.
Weather works. It's
Yes,
awesome.
weather does work.
When we return, Lauren will have a look at the weather going on here in Valpo.
Stick with us. You're watching the Cold Front on VUTV Channel 15.
Good morning, Valparaiso University. What's a better way to start your day than with a new jam? And WVUR has just what you need.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, if dying young won't change your mind, baby.
Broadcasting sports, news, weather, and music on air, online, and on campus. WVUR is my jam.
Welcome back to the Cold Front. Today has been a rather windy but still very chilly. We're seeing temperatures right around 47 degrees here in Valpo, but with those strong winds, it feels like with the wind chill right around 40 degrees. 39 is the current wind chill back in Kankakee. So general trend showing that you should definitely grab that jacket as you head outside, and even seeing a South Bend wind chill below freezing at 31 degrees. Speaking of temperatures, forecast right now 44, right around 47, and then tonight 38 will be the temperature as you head out to the men's basketball game tonight. It's going to be a clear night, but again, those chilly temperatures will be sticking around. Now, overnight temperatures are to fall to right around the freezing mark by 7 a.m. on Saturday. They are going to warm up, though, into the lower 50s. 46 will be the temperature for 6 p.m. as many of you guys have dinner plans. Make sure and definitely grab that jacket because you're going to need it because it is going to be a very chilly temperatures. Now, overnight, we're going to drop down on Sunday morning, 7 a.m. 42 will be the temperature, so you're definitely going to want to grab that jacket. You might be thinking, are we above normal? Are we below normal? Well, for right now, we are below normal. Forecasted temperature 47. Our actual temperature today is a high right around 50 should be for this time of year, and even our low. Now, if we look back to 2013, we actually set a record for an overnight low of 15 degrees. So at least we are not feeling that temperature today. As we look at the radar, we're just seeing some general clouds around the area, but clearing out as we head throughout the evening. You notice those pushing off to our east, and that is due to a high pressure system that is coming into place that will keep us dry for the remainder of the weekend. Again, just some clear skies for Sunday. It's a big night for men's basketball. We're going to be experiencing and seeing our first Horizon League game of the season. They're playing against IPFW. Temperatures are going to be right around 40 with clear skies, so make sure as you head out there that you do bundle up because it will be a very chilly night walking to the Arc. Forecast for tonight, we're going to be seeing a temperature right around 29 for the low. Again, mostly cloudy conditions. Again, winds could be gusty or 25. Tomorrow, 52 will be the temperature with sunny conditions. Could see a couple wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour, but they are going to be light from the south-southwest. Taking a look at our 7-day forecast, we're going to be remaining fairly dry for the remainder of the weekend and to the start of the work week. But by Monday, the chance slightly returns. But you do see temperatures return back to normal. As I mentioned earlier, temperatures are usually in the 50s for this time of year. We're actually going to be returning into the 60s, again with the chance of showers. I know that they are predicting near the end of the week a bigger system similar to the one that we had last week come through the area. That's going to cause our chances for some showers before we leave for Thanksgiving break, and also some cooler conditions as well.
But like you mentioned, those temperatures are going to be in the 50s and 60s almost. And you said
Right.
that temperatures right now for the summer, what, in the right around 50
50s,
degrees? So still chances for being above normal.
Yes, I know that I was talking to one of the Met professors, and I was saying, looking ahead to winter, I'm not a big winter weather fan with snow and stuff. I said, so how is this looking to shape up? And he said, we're going to have our cold spells, we're going to have our chance of snow, but for most, because of the El Nino, we talked about that a couple episodes ago near the beginning, we did notice and we'll be seeing warmer, more milder conditions like we're expecting, and we're also expecting drier conditions, so not as much precip. These systems, the systems have been very progressive recently, and they just have been moving through. So when they get amped up like that, that is a good thing because that decreases our chance of rain, and it's just a short-lived rain period.
Definitely, and now we're seeing that changing pattern. We're finally in fall, so
Yes.
we're finally seeing, even though those temperatures are fluctuating between really warm and really cold, fall is a transition season,
Yes.
which we have talked about. So the fact that we're finally in that transition season, it looks like Mother Nature is almost waving that white flag when it
Yes.
comes to the warm temperature sticking around.
This semester and this year has just flown by. We're already talking about Thanksgiving break next Friday. And then soon after that, we have finals week, and then we have Christmas break, and then that takes us into winter. So that's another thing that is going to be a big part that we need to keep an eye on. What kind of preparedness does campus have for snow? What about the city? And I know that another thing we're going to be talking about a little bit after Thanksgiving break is actually snow names. I know the Weather Channel started this recently, and to keep track of their snow names, they're kind of like hurricanes. They keep track of that, and we have a lovely story that will be airing and stuff. But again, that's not till after
Well, I
Thanksgiving
can't wait
break.
to hear that story. I know it's going to be a busy time with winter and then us students getting ready to finish up the semester strong because we're going to do it. We're going to
Yes.
finish everything. It's going to be
Especially
a good
for
time.
us, that, we're heading into our last semester of here at college. It's not something we like to talk about,
Let's
but,
not talk about that.
but it's something we need to prepare ourselves for and stuff. And so that's
Definitely.
just what the winter season is bringing with it.
All right, well, Lauren, thank you everyone for joining us. That's all we have for you today.
Since next week is the last day before Thanksgiving break, we will not be having a show.
We will return with one more episode this semester on December 11th.
On this day, we will talk about winter, from preparedness to winter storm naming, like we mentioned earlier.
It's going to be a good one. We'll have all this and more. If you have not done so, like us on Facebook at VUTV Weather. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lynnette Grant.
And I'm Lauren Hilko. Have a great day and a very happy Thanksgiving.